Welcome back, radio entrepreneurs, listeners, and fans. I'm producer Jillian King, and I'm excited to introduce you all to the Summer 2025 FBA Family Business Panel Discussion, What Does Success Look Like in 2025? Today, we have two returning panelists that you should know well, Stephen Wilchins, founding partner at Wilchins, Cosentino, and Novins, and Richard Hirschen, partner at Gray, Gray. Welcome. Glad you can be with us today. Next, I'm excited to introduce our guest panelists, Jonathan Jaxtimer and Sam Jaxtimer, the brothers in second-generation leadership of E.J. Jaxtimer Builder, one of Cape Cod's premier luxury home builders. We are also joined by co-founder of the Family Business Association and senior managing director at Citizens Private Wealth, Brian Nagle. Welcome all. Finally, I would like to introduce the panel's moderator, Radio Entrepreneur's host and CEO of Mage LLC, JDavis. Welcome, Jeffrey. I will now hand the conversation over to you.
Thank you, Jillian, and thank you for all your good work with Radio Entrepreneurs. And I want to welcome our guests. And for our listeners, I'd like to just create a little context before our first question. Our last two panels, and this series has been going on for a while now, what does success look like in 2025? Our last two panels, Barrett Distributing and Blout Foods, it was a family that had already been through a transition successfully and actually was potentially looking at another generation. So they were a little bit further along. What I like about the Jaxtimer family and the Jaxtimer business is that they're more at the front end of the transition process. They're just taking over leadership of their business. So for those who are watching, you get to get a perspective in our totality of how we see businesses at different stages of development. So I'm going to start right away by thanking the Jaxtimers for showing up and also apologize. One of the Jaxtimers is missing this morning. He was called off with something very important, which we understand. My first question, directed to either one of you, do you think that the family had a special formula that helped it to become successful?
Sure, Jeff, I'll take that question. We strive by our responsibility and customer service time, instant responsibility, rapid response times and quality products.
Sam, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and our father has taught us from day one to always get back to customers within 24 hours.
Good corporate rule. So I'll just go to a second question before we go. Your father, E.J. Jaxtimer, the patriarch of the family, what do you think were his greatest qualities that he brought to the business that you could learn from and use?
Hard work and honesty.
I'd say he's proud, right? He's customer-centric. And I would also add demanding.
As you move forward in the company and take on a larger role, do you share those values? Do you have your own ideas maybe of how you want to change things in the future?
I would say we definitely share the values and the vision, right? We just may have a different outlook of how we want to get to the same result.
Does that ever cause any friction or is it all pretty smooth?
All the time, right? That's where we're in the beginning of this process working with Jeffrey. That is, one of the biggest challenges, right? We're 48 years in business, right? And we've done something, a certain way for that long, right? So it's hard changing, the habits and or the way we want to do things, even though we are, on the same mindset, we're in the same vision, we're in the same, we're looking for the same goals. We're just looking to try to get there with option B, or a different route.
Jonathan, are you speaking in the context of you and your brothers, or are you speaking in the context of your brothers with your father?
I would say we all share the same vision, all three of us, right? We're in different segments of the business, but, we all know things need to change, right? And it's just, how do we get there?
Have there been specific challenges as a family business that you've encountered? And if so, how have you dealt with them as a family?
So I would say definitely challenges, right? As you look through, one of the challenges is definitely family business time, right? That sort of is one with us, right? When we do have time off, it's usually with the same group of people discussing business, at the dinner table or on vacation, right? So, that is, you never can get away with it, but we're obviously fortunate to be in the situation that we're in. But it is challenging at times, especially when we all have significant others now that are living with us and, becoming part of the family.
So how does that play out? The significant others or spouses?
I'll put that into context, Steve, before they answer, because I know a little bit. Some of my friends who own businesses on Cape Cod are very frustrated by the Jaxtimer family because whenever there's a fishing tournament, they fish as a family, they win as a family. So they don't just win at work, they win at fishing.
So you remind me of the D'Angelo family. Do you know them?
I do not.
Okay. So they're very close for four guys. Okay. Very successful business.
Currently, my wife is currently doing a temporary position in the company in one of our businesses, landscape. So that's been a different dynamic. She started here in November for a short period of time. We don't have any other significant others in the business yet. And, I don't know if there are plans to be in the future. We don't know that.
So have you set up a family rules for family members?
I would say no. That is something that we are going to need to do, right? One thing that comes to my mind is, there's definitely confusion, conflict between, ownership and the positions that we run in a daily basis, right? So, those are definitely blurred, but we do have challenges with some of those that we are working with Jeffrey to sort of amend.
Is the idea to formalize those roles further?
We are working on that currently, we've built out an org chart. We're trying to develop all the job positions, right? So we can, hand over some, responsibilities to others and then, transfer duties that we may be currently owning.
Well, there is one degree of separation, and Sam, you own that one, correct?
Yeah.
You want to explain that to the group, because it actually, you have a little bit different relationship to the rest of the family than your brothers have.
Yeah. So I work on the landscape side of the business, which is actually its own company, Jaxtimer Landscaping LLC. And in that, I'm the construction manager and deal with all the hardscape and softscape, and which has allowed me to kind of work separately because Jonathan and Jamie work directly with our father. And, I kind of do my own thing and handle my own stuff. And, I see it from the outskirts of what they're dealing with.
Then I would add, in the last 3 to 5 years, we're working with another consultant on the landscape side, and we've totally separated those businesses and gone through a restructure, with the org chart and deliverables, and Sam and I both hold different roles in that business, but that operates daily separate from EJ. Obviously he owns the clients and stuff because of the same clients and builder, but day to day, he's not involved in, right? So it's definitely a different way of operation, right? Which we're looking to implement over here on the building company side.
So Sam, you seem like a free spirit then, Sam.
In a way.
Wow. So
Yeah, in a way, but all the projects intertwine. So I do a lot of the hardscape and masonry and all that type of stuff for the building business.
And when do you feel like it's appropriate to call in your father and your brothers to weigh in on some decisions?
When it's needed, if it's something that's out of my control or I might need backup with, but for the most part, EJ stays out of this. And if I have to bring in Jonathan to help with client or whatever it may be, a situation, I can do so.
Unlike our last two panels, their father is still in love with the business and gainfully employed and gets up early in the morning and goes to work every day the way he always did. And that's, so, in hindsight, I know there's always transition issues. Are there certain things that you've done that you would have done differently?
Absolutely. I look back, I've been in, full time in the business since out of college for, I graduated in 2012, right? If I could go back to 2012, I would have been employed by someone else for a year or two to get outside experience and sort of, some experience of how other companies do things, right? Outside perspectives, I think is good. So if I could go back, I would have definitely chosen to go somewhere else for a couple of years, full intention to come back here, but, maybe a little stepping stone somewhere else.
That's the same for your siblings? Did they all start at this company from the very beginning, or did they have experience at other?
So right out of college, for me, I went to do an internship with RP Marzilli landscape contractors. And I was offered a position after that internship. And, there's a little commute involved in it. But to this day, if you ask me, I wish I did that back then. It would have just gained me so much more experience and dealing with larger projects that we're doing now and all that.
Jonathan, I think your position is good to require, people to work outside, but how is that going to play out with eventually your children or your significant others or spouses?
It's a great question. None of us have children yet. My wife is pregnant currently. I would love for, us to hand this down to another generation for sure. Would I make it a requirement? I would love to, right? Depending on the situation, maybe none of them are interested in the business at all, right? But, more and more colleges these days, universities, require or do recommend, outside internships or some type of work co-op. So I feel there's a lot of value in that. I think we're too premature to decide that currently.
Has the formalization of the roles around the different segments of the business started to drive some thinking around estate planning and succession planning?
We've been, we are, all of us, myself and my two brothers, and my mother and father are day-to-day business operators, right? And we are total operation in day-to-day as well, and not, as much bigger picture stuff. So it takes us a long time to move things successfully. In the last couple of years, though, we worked with a state attorney and we have developed a trust and some other things that, we're planning for. It took some time, but there's definitely some things that, as we have grown significantly in the last 5 years company that we implemented rather quickly, just for liability and protection. But, that's something that we need to continue as we go forward for sure. That's the important stuff in my mind,
Absolutely.
Well, your father, like most of us who have been in family businesses or worked with family businesses, was sort of for many years a single operator leader, and now there's three of you, and there's three of you with your father and your mother, so there's five of you running down the same aisle every day. Could you talk to us a little bit about sort of like the bumps and bruises of that and how you're working through it?
Yeah, sure. My role is mainly on the building side, but I do run our landscape business as a side job. And EJ and I, are and Jamie on the business side, the building side, working together daily, right? So my mother is always around. She works 4 days a week here with different, meetings and decisions that we make as a family, for the business moving forward, or our charitable work. And she is always partaking in those decisions, and she partakes in managing our realty trusts and real estate, with renters. So there is definitely friction days, there's good days, there's bad, like anything. Some are more difficult because they're family related, and that's, sort of, we need to decide that, like, is this good for the business? Is this good for us personally?
So strategically, when do you have time to work through everything at a higher level rather than the crisis every day?
That is something we really struggle with. You can ask the moderator, JDavis here. We are fortunate. Like I said, we have a lot of work, not enough people, not enough process here on the building side, which is the sort of the journey that we've begun here. We are very day to day, so it does make it very difficult, but that's one of the biggest things that we need to, keep hiring, and elevate some of those people that are here and bring new people in to take some of the responsibilities that we're doing so we can work on the business.
Right. So you're as Jeff said, you're at the beginning of the process. So that's something, clearly that's very important. And time, it's important to spend the time and effort to create that atmosphere and opportunity, because you'll see you'll get a lot of leverage out of it and benefit out of it long term.
So I'll ask Sam the next question as we're getting closer to the end of this first segment. Sam, do you feel that birth order affects the management of the business?
No, I don't think so. I think when it comes down to it, it's either you're doing your job or you're not, and eventually just holding people accountable.
Jonathan's the oldest. Is that reassuring, Jonathan?
No, I agree with Sam. I think, we're all in different roles of the company. We all have different skill sets, right? Some, whether, what we went to college for, right? Or, just our relative experience in the field or in the office itself, right? So there's definitely differentiators. Would I say no, I would agree with Sam.
Well, my last question of this whole thing is that, your father had a definition of integrity. You mentioned it up front and how he liked to address the market. Does that become a source of unification right now with the three brothers, or is at times does that create conflict in terms of the interpretation and the execution of that?
I think we all share the common goal of integrity. I think, or even our employees, right? That's something we instill into, right down to our carpenters and guys that mow the lawns, right? If you don't know the answer to the question, don't BS a client, right? Let's say, hey, I don't know, but I'll get you the answer. I'll get to someone that can. I think we all share that vision. I think on, execution over promising, I think we're probably in disagreement there, with committing to sort of schedules or budgets, right? I think there's, EJ loves to be with clients and loves to sell work and loves to, play in his philanthropy efforts. So, but I think we all share the integrity word for sure.
Right. I'm going to turn this segment over to our producer, Jillian King. If you don't mind, it's Jillian.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That wraps up part 1 of this summer 2025 edition of the FBA Family Business Panel Discussion. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers who have tuned in for this first segment on Radio Entrepreneurs. Be sure to check out parts 2 and 3 of this discussion to hear more, and click subscribe just below the video if you're on YouTube, or follow if you're listening on one of our podcast platforms to stay up to date on all our postings as they go live. If you're a fan of our videos, please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and press the bell button. It helps immensely. Radio Entrepreneurs is also active on LinkedIn, so be sure to follow our page there as well for more business advice and discussions. Until next time, goodbye and thanks for listening. We'll be back with more stories on Radio Entrepreneurs.